Hi, YouTube. Suka here with another thought for today. So, one of the things that have been often asked is how many US casualties would there be in case America fights with Iran? And that's actually the right question to ask. Some people might be offended when I say this, and I'm sorry. But the number one metric for whether this war is a success or not is not really regime change. It's not really the number of casualties in Iran or anywhere else. It's the number of American dead. If there is a lot of American dead, or if the American dead reaches the high two digits, that will be considered a loss for America. Honestly, even if the American dead reaches two digits, that would be considered loss for America. If it's just in the one digits or even none, that would be considered a win. I say that even if they achieve regime change, the U.S. Army right now really cannot absorb losses. In fact, let's say Russia was to invade like Germany or somebody, I would not expect the U.S. Army to send anybody. I would expect the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force to support, because that one you can get away with little casualties. But the frontline fighting would have to be done by the Germans or even the Taiwanese. So the U.S. population will revolt if there's a lot of American casualties. In fact, if the Iranians were to somehow sink a U.S. aircraft carrier, or even a U.S. ship, really, if they were able to sink something, I would imagine Trump would get impeached. Now, what is the right answer? So, you're getting a lot of different responses. The extreme left, whether that's like Hassan Piker or something, they would like to prevent the war because they're trying to protect Iran. So they would say that America will suffer thousands of casualties. The extreme right, or at least the MAGA right, think that you can get away with no casualties because they Midnight Hammer went well, Venezuela went well, and everything's going well. And Trump, the U.S. usually sustains casualties when they put boots on the ground. And Trump seems really adverse to putting boots on the ground, which is correct because the American public doesn't want that. So, in order to determine how whether the U.S. will sustain casualties, we have to check like where is the actual concentration of Americans, because you would need to hit those to to cause U.S. casualties. So we have, I guess, two major concentrations and one minor. So the first major one is the U.S. Gerald Ford. So that would be the carrier battle group. That one is around here in the Mediterranean Ocean. I think its main mission is to protect Israel because it's actually quite far from Iran. So although it's Tehran is in the western portion of Iran, so it could still be hit by it, but it wouldn't be able to hit the further off portions. So I don't even think that the missiles from Iran can hit the Mediterranean Ocean. However, even if they could, the Mediterranean Sea is very vast, so you're not necessarily gonna find where exactly the carrier battle group is there. So I find it highly unlikely that they will hit that. Now, the second one is the Abraham Lincoln. The Abraham Lincoln is of course around the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean, so it's somewhere in between there. Now, for the same reason as the Gerald Ford is not gonna get hit, um, I don't think the Abraham Lincoln is gonna get hit either. Now, at this point, you're probably saying, what about the war in the Houthis? During the war against the Houthis, some of the planes were hit. Like I think they lost two planes due to malfunctions, or either malfunctions or like they hit each other on the deck or something like that. And then I think there was some glancing hits on some ships. Please remember that the mission during the Houthi war was number one to keep the straits over here open. I think that's called the Bab Amamded Straits over here. So if you can imagine, if you have to keep that open, then your ships are gonna be located nearby. Because remember, the Houthis were sending helicopters to raid and capture ships, so you'd have to be around to protect that. Now the Houthis can see you from land, so they're able to locate your ships, and they're able to send their little drones over to you. So now, even some of their more advanced drones can even reach Israel. So it's not really a challenge for them to reach you over here. And when they do reach Israel, they reach like a city called Haifa or a port. So they or Aliyat, they reach specific cities. They don't reach specific like targets. So it's gonna be hard for them as well to hit a target they don't know. A target they have no idea where they're hiding in the Arabian and Indian Sea. Now, it is possible for the Chinese to send coordinates, but consider that while the Chinese can send radar images or satellite images and stuff like that, you would still have to fly a drone over empty sea to actually get to that point without getting lost. So it's still highly unlikely. So just having the two major sources of American life in the area pretty much protected due to the seas means that the US will not really sustain a lot of casualties here. Now, the minor source of American life in the area is the bases in Kuwait, Saudi, Bahrain, Qatar, and UAE. So there's actually a lot of US bases around the shoreline over here. Now, as you can tell, those are static bases, so the Iranians know where they are, and Iran is over here. So if any strikes were to come, they would come over there. The good thing about the Trump admin is that they've actually begun evacuating some of those bases already. I think they recently evacuated something in Lebanon. They also evacuated something in Qatar, and they're giving like all sorts of bullshit reasons, like we saw some drones or something like that. And I would expect them not to say outright that they're withdrawing, but they're trying to limit the potential casualties on their end, which is again is correct, because that's what this war is going to be measured on. Now, so this is the only point of vulnerability for the Americans, and I expect they're taking care of it already. So what do I think? Are the Americans going to sustain major casualties? I do not see a ship getting sunk. Period. I don't care if they have missile technology or drone technology or anything like that. It's just too far, and it's just too well hidden. The ocean's just too big. Now, will the bases get hit? Maybe, but I don't see any American casualties there as well. So, in my opinion, either low tens or low digits, like 1 to 10, or none at all. Now, does this mean that America and its allies are gonna get through scot free? Actually, no. Um, well, this depending on whether you think Israel is a genocidal state, this may please you or not. I think the number one vulnerability in this war is actually Israel. Um, which is why I don't really think American troops are gonna be there. But Israel and the Israelis are gonna take a major hit in this war. I expect Iran to send all of its missiles toward Israel, and I would expect major infrastructure damage towards Israel. Um, do I expect major casualties? Actually, yes, they could. However, one thing about the Israelis is that if there's any population in the world who is capable of taking an airstrike, it's them. Like for example, if you were to launch an air raid siren in New York, people would just like be confused at what you're doing, and even while the bombs were dropping on them, they wouldn't be hiding or anything like that, because it's not something that they've experienced before. However, if you go to Israel, you launch a air raid siren, or their app says that a missile's on the way. They all go to shelters. They all go to underground bunkers or their own bunker underneath their own houses, because they have a law that each house has to have a bunker, which means that they're actually well equipped to deal with this, because number one, they've done it before. and number two, their infrastructure is prepared for it. So while there could be a lot of casualties, their natural the natural defenses of Israelis will defend it, will limit it. This is actually also why I think Netanyahu went to Trump to stop the airstrikes earlier on this month, because it's gonna be Israel who's gonna hit the hardest for it. Do I expect other things to go wrong for Israel as well? I do expect Hezbollah and the Houthis to do something. I don't expect Hamas to do anything because they don't want to justify another attack by Israel. But I do expect the other proxies to. Now, another point of contention that's also been raised up is that the U.S. is running out of THAAD missiles, and that the October 12 war, or the 12-day war, actually used up 25% of all U.S. Defensive missiles. I'm not actually too worried about that. So, there's a lot of times in history where we're like transitioning from one set of weapons to another. So I think the very first example, the best example I can give, if you're a Japanese history buff, is the Sengoku Jidai period of Japan. So at the start of the era, they were using bows and arrows. The Dutch and the Portuguese introduced guns, and Nobunaga develops tactics with guns, and by the end, they were using guns already. Or another period would be World War II. The start of World War II, the biggest ships were the battleships. Everybody had a plan that involved using battleships. During the war, it turned out that the carriers were actually the most important ships, and the battleships were next to useless. So, why do I say this? Right now, when you have these carrier battle groups, they have expensive missile systems because they only expect expensive missile systems to hit them, like something that can track them and all that stuff. The problem with that is that um, offensive technology has caught up with them, which means that now a regular drone can catch up with them. So the math no longer works in their favor. Like, for example, if US spends $1 million to defend their ships, and Iran spends like $1 million to hit their ships, and the US intercepts it, that's fine. Because the US can afford to pay for it, and Iran will run out of money first. However, what will happen if Iran sends like a $20,000 drone and the US has to spend $1 million on a missile? So of course the US is gonna run out of money first. So right now, THAADs and all that stuff, they actually belong to an outdated era of warfare. So they're gonna get phased out anyway. And you can bet that China is looking at this too. And they know that the way to get US ships is gonna be by drone swarm, not necessarily by high quality missiles. The good news is we already see the next generation of defenses. Israel has Iron Beam. I think the British have something called Dragonfire. So basically, laser-based defenses that can shoot down drones. Um, and each shot or missile, or each interception costs $3 to fire. So the math works towards the defenders again. So due to that, in the next few wars, we're gonna see a mix of THAADs and other missile defenses and drone defenses. So I don't really mind the missile stocks will run low. And so that is pretty much it. My prediction is very low U.S. casualties, if not none. However, very high Israeli casualties, and of course, extremely high Iranian casualties because the uh, the so-called axis of resistance don't do anything to protect their population. Like the Hamas let their fighters use the tunnels. I'm pretty sure the IRGC will hide while the population takes the brunt of everything, whereas Israel has their own tunnels. So each has their own shelters rather. So we're gonna see very high Iranian casualties. Hopefully, it gets the Ayatollah out. That will be worth it for them. But otherwise, it's gonna be a big civil war. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to me today. I will see you tomorrow. Have a good day.